The morning my daughter told me not to come for Thanksgiving, I was standing in my kitchen with a pie crust cooling on the counter and her old paper turkey taped to the refrigerator. She had made that turkey when she was 7 years old. One wing was bigger than the other. The beak was crooked. Across the belly, in purple crayon, she had written, "I am thankful for Dad because he fixes everything." 32 years later, she called to tell me I would make dinner uncomfortable. "Dad," Lauren said, in that careful voice people use when they have already made a decision and only want you to accept it politely, "Evan's parents are hosting this year." "I know," I said. "You told me to be there at 4. There was a pause. Through the phone, I could hear dishes clinking. A television was playing somewhere behind her. "Right. About that." I looked at the pie. Pumpkin, her favorite. "Evan invited a few people from work," she continued. "And his father has some investors coming in from Denver." It turned into more of a professional thing than a family dinner. I waited. She still hadn't said it. People rarely say the cruel part directly. They dress it up and hope you'll unwrap it yourself. "So," I said, "you don't want me there." "Dad, that's not what I said." "It's what you called to say." Another pause. Then she sighed. "You know how these things are." "No," I said quietly. "Tell me." Evan's parents live differently than we do." I almost laughed at that. She hadn't lived the way I did in nearly 20 years. Lauren and Evan had a 6-bedroom house outside Denver with heated bathroom floors, a wine room, and a garage bigger than the first house her mother and I bought. I lived in a 2-bedroom ranch house outside Fort Collins, drove a 12-year-old Ford pickup, and still sharpened my own mower blades. Apparently, somewhere along the way, that had become something to explain. "His father's been introducing us to people who could really help Evan's company," Lauren said. "And I just think you'd feel out of place." I looked through the kitchen window at my truck. The hood was dusty from the gravel road. "I've been out of place before." "I don't mean it like that." "How do you mean it?" Her voice dropped. "Dad, please don't make this harder." That hurt more than the rest of it. Not because she was angry, because she sounded tired. As if I were a problem she had been assigned to solve. I rested my hand on the counter. "What did Evan say?" "This isn't about Evan," which told me exactly what Evan had said. I could picture him. Perfect haircut, expensive watch, shirts that never seemed to wrinkle. I had nothing against success. I spent 38 years as a municipal water systems engineer. I worked nights, weekends, holidays, and more emergency call-outs than I could count. I believed in hard work. What I never understood was the kind of success that required someone else to look small. "All right," I said. Lauren sounded surprised. "All right? I won't come." "Dad, you asked me not to. I heard you. I just don't want you sitting there feeling uncomfortable." I looked again at the paper turkey. "I wouldn't have been uncomfortable." She went quiet. I could have reminded her of the Thanksgiving after her mother died, when Lauren was 15 and refused to come downstairs because every chair at the table reminded her that one chair was empty. I could have reminded her that I sat on the floor outside her bedroom for 3 hours while the turkey burned because I was afraid if I walked away, she would think I had left too. I could have reminded her of college tuition, her first car, the mortgage payment I covered when Evan's business nearly folded 7 years earlier. But love that keeps receipts is not love, so I said none of it. "What should I tell the kids?" she asked. "My grandchildren." Mason was 10, Chloe was 8. I had bought Mason a beginner's woodworking set and Chloe a telescope. They were wrapped in the spare room. "Tell them Grandpa had other plans." "You do?" I looked around my empty kitchen. "Now I do." She exhaled, relieved. That was the moment I understood something I had been avoiding for years. My daughter was not worried I would be lonely. She was relieved I would be absent. "Happy Thanksgiving, sweetheart," I said. "Dad, wait." I ended the call. For a long time, I stood there with one hand still resting on the counter. Then I took the pie, carried it to the trash, and stopped. I don't know why. Maybe because wasting a perfectly good pie seemed like giving the whole day over to bitterness. So I put it back in the refrigerator. At 67 years old, I had learned that grief and hunger often arrive together. You still have to eat. I spent the next hour pretending I had chores. I cleaned tools that were already clean. I reorganized a drawer of screws. I checked the weather even though I had checked it twice that morning. A major cold front was moving down from Wyoming. The forecast said temperatures could drop below zero by nightfall, with heavy snow west of town. At 2:13, my phone rang. The name on the screen was Tom Alvarez. I smiled despite myself. Tom and I had worked together for 22 years before I retired. He was now the utilities director for a mountain district called Red Valley, about 90 minutes away. I answered, "Tom, if you're calling to ask me to come back to work, my rate has doubled." He didn't laugh. "Jack, I need you." I sat straighter. "What happened?" "Pressure loss on the north side. We've got a break somewhere near the old distribution loop." "Which line?" "Main 12-inch. I frowned. "That should isolate automatically." It didn't. "Back up?" "Not responding." I stood up. "How cold?" -11 by midnight. My joking mood disappeared completely. Red Valley was a small mountain town, but its northern distribution loop served almost 4,000 residents. It also supplied St. Catherine's Nursing Center and the county medical clinic. If water pressure dropped too low in sub-zero weather, the problem wouldn't stay a water problem for long. Pipes froze. Heating systems failed. Sprinkler systems lost pressure. Buildings became unsafe. "How long has pressure been dropping?" 40 minutes. "Where's your system map?" "We've got the digital plans." "The old paper map?" Silence. "Tom, we're looking." "Look in the basement archive." "Cabinet 4. Bottom drawer." Another silence. "How do you remember that?" "Because I put it there." He breathed out. "Jack, the bigger problem is the emergency bypass." I felt a knot form in my stomach. "What about it?" "Nobody knows how to open it." I closed my eyes. 33 years earlier, Red Valley had suffered a catastrophic winter main failure. After that event, I had helped design a manual bypass system connecting two pressure zones beneath an old maintenance yard. It had been intended as a last resort, a simple system, in theory. But simple systems become mysterious when the people who built them retire and the instructions are buried under 3 decades of software updates. "Who's on site?" I asked. "Matthews, Ruiz, 3 operators, county emergency management." "Has anyone touched the south isolation valve?" "I don't think so." "Make sure they don't." "Jack, if they close that before the bypass is pressurized, you can lose the clinic too." I heard him shout to someone away from the phone. Then he came back. "Can you talk us through it?" I looked at the snow beginning to fall outside my window. "I can try." For the next 20 minutes, I walked them through procedures I had not spoken aloud in years. Tom put me on speaker. I heard voices, metal clanging, wind, someone swearing. Then Tom said, "The actuator is frozen. Use the manual wheel. It won't move. Don't force it. Pressure is still dropping." I rubbed my forehead. The bypass had a release sequence that depended on 3 valves being opened in a specific order. I remembered designing it. I remembered arguing with a contractor over the placement. I remembered standing in that maintenance yard in freezing rain with Lauren's mother, Susan, waiting in the truck because our babysitter canceled and I had promised to be home for dinner. "Life leaves pieces of itself everywhere. I need to see it," I said. "You're not driving up here." "Then start moving 4,000 people." "Jack, I'm serious." The line went quiet. Outside, the snow was getting heavier. I walked to the front window. My daughter was 40 miles south, probably arranging flowers on some polished table, while people in expensive clothes discussed commercial developments. I had nowhere I was expected to be. "Send me the road conditions," I said. Tom cursed. I grabbed my coat. The drive took almost 2 hours. The highway was manageable at first, but the farther west I went, the worse it became. Snow blew sideways across the road. Visibility dropped. Twice I considered turning around. Both times, I pictured St. Catherine's. My mother had spent her final 6 months in a nursing home. You do not forget what helplessness looks like. People in beds. People who cannot move quickly. People who trust strangers to make sure the heat stays on. I kept driving. When I reached Red Valley, emergency lights reflected off the snow. Public works trucks lined the street. A sheriff's deputy waved me through after Tom had apparently given them my plate number. The maintenance yard looked smaller than I remembered. Maybe everything does after 30 years. Tom came running toward my truck. He had more gray hair than the last time I saw him. "So much for retirement," he said. "Where's the valve vault?" He pointed. I followed him into the storm. The next 3 hours passed in fragments, flashlights, frozen steel, Radio calls, pressure readings, my knees aching as I knelt beside equipment installed when I was still young enough to believe my body would last forever. One operator, a kid named Ben, who looked about 25, held a light while I cleared ice from an access assembly. "You built this?" he asked. "Helped? When?" "Before you were born." "That makes me feel better." "It shouldn't." He laughed nervously. "Good. People work better when they can still laugh." The original bypass lever had corroded. The indicator plate was unreadable. Someone had replaced part of the assembly years earlier but reversed one of the directional markings. That was why the newer crew could not make sense of it. I stared at the valve stem. "Tom." "Yeah? Get me a wrench." "What size?" "The ugly one." He blinked. "You know exactly what I mean." He did. 20 minutes later, with 6 men working in sequence, the first bypass line opened. Pressure climbed. Not much, but enough. Then it stalled. "What now?" Ben asked. I looked at the gauges. "Something's blocking the secondary feed." Tom swore under his breath. The temperature was dropping fast. The county emergency manager approached us. "We've started preparing buses for the nursing home." "How long?" I asked. 45 minutes. I looked toward the clinic. Its lights glowed through the snow. "We have less." I asked for the old map. Tom handed me a plastic sleeve. There it was. My handwriting. Faded blue ink. A note in the margin. "Check low point drain before secondary open." I had written it in 1992. I nearly laughed. "What?" Tom asked. "My younger self just saved my older self." We found the low point drain buried behind a storage shed. Snow had covered the access box completely. By the time we cleared it, I could barely feel my fingers. The mechanism was frozen. Ben said, "We can heat it." Carefully. A torch came out. I shook my head. "No flame." "What do you suggest?" I looked toward a maintenance truck. "Hot water." Tom stared at me. "We're having a water emergency. There's still a coffee maker in the office, isn't there?" He started laughing. 5 minutes later, 3 utility workers were carrying electric kettles across a snow-covered maintenance yard. That was when the reporter arrived. I didn't notice her at first. A local news crew had been covering the storm closures. Someone from county emergency management had told them about the nursing home risk. I was bent over the access box when a woman shouted, "Sir, can we ask what's happening?" "No," I said. She waited. "Why not?" "Because I'm busy." Ben laughed so hard he nearly dropped the kettle. The reporter did not leave. When we finally opened the low point drain, black water and rust blasted from the line. Then the secondary feed moved. Tom watched the pressure gauge. 42. Keep watching. 46. No one spoke. 51. Ben whispered. "Come on. Come on." 56. Tom slapped the side of the truck. "We've got it." Someone cheered. Then everyone did. I didn't. Not at first. I just stood there watching the gauge. 60. 62. Stable. Only then did I breathe. The county manager radioed the nursing home. Evacuation canceled. The clinic was secure. The north side would remain under emergency restrictions until the broken main was repaired, but the system would hold. That should have been the end of it. I wanted coffee. A dry pair of socks, maybe half the pumpkin pie waiting in my refrigerator. Instead, the reporter stepped in front of me. "You're Jack Mercer?" I looked at Tom. He suddenly became fascinated by the snow. "Who told you?" "The utilities director." "Traitor." "Traitor." She smiled. "I'm Rachel Kim with Channel 9. We're told you retired from municipal engineering 5 years ago." 6. "And you designed the emergency bypass that was used tonight, with a team, and then came back during the storm to operate it." "I came because they called." "You drove nearly 2 hours in a blizzard." "The roads weren't that bad." Behind the camera, Ben shook his head dramatically. The reporter noticed. "Your colleagues disagree. They're young." She smiled again. "Mr. Mercer, St. Catharines was preparing to evacuate 58 residents tonight. County officials say that without restoring pressure, the medical clinic may also have been forced to close. How does it feel knowing your work prevented that?" I looked toward the maintenance yard, at the men shoveling snow, at Tom speaking into a radio, at the old map lying on the hood of a truck. It feels like the system worked, but the system needed you. No, it needed people willing to keep trying. She asked a few more questions. I gave short answers. Then I left. I had no idea the story would go any further. At 7:40 that night, I was sitting in the break room at the Red Valley utility office eating vending machine crackers when my phone began vibrating. First, an old coworker. Then my neighbor. Then my cousin in Arizona. I ignored all three. At 7:46, Tom walked into the room holding his phone. "You're on television." I was standing in front of a camera. That was always a risk. "No, I mean they're running the old footage." "What old footage?" He turned the screen toward me. Channel 9 had found archived news video from 1992. There I was, 33 years old, brown hair, no stomach, standing in nearly the same maintenance yard beside the newly completed bypass system. The younger version of me was explaining how the emergency connection could protect Red Valley during a major winter failure. The reporter's voice played over the footage. More than 3 decades after helping design Red Valley's emergency water system, retired engineer Jack Mercer returned tonight to help save the town from the kind of crisis he once planned for. I stared at myself. I had forgotten that interview existed. Tom grinned. "You look terrible with a mustache." I was thinking the same thing. My phone buzzed again. "Lauren." I let it ring. Tom noticed. "You going to answer?" "No." It stopped, then immediately rang again. "Lauren." I turned the phone face down. Tom sat across from me. "Everything okay?" "Fine." He had known me too long. "Family?" I opened the crackers. "Something like that." He didn't push. At the same time, 40 miles away, my daughter was sitting at a Thanksgiving table I had been asked not to attend. I learned the details later. Evan's parents had invited 14 people, 2 developers, a bank executive, a city councilman, a couple from Aspen. The kind of dinner where everyone quietly evaluated everyone else. Apparently, the television was on in a sitting room. One of the guests had been following storm coverage because he owned property near Red Valley. Chloe saw me first. My 8-year-old granddaughter. She ran into the dining room shouting, "Mom, Grandpa's on TV." Lauren told her she was mistaken. Then Mason came in. "No, Mom. It's really Grandpa." Someone raised the volume. The room went quiet. My face appeared on a television larger than my dining room wall. The report showed the nursing home, the clinic, utility crews, then the old footage. One of the developers at the table recognized my name. "Jack Mercer?" he said. Lauren later told me that was the moment she wished the floor would open. The man had worked on infrastructure projects across northern Colorado. He knew some of the systems I had designed. Another guest said he had heard of me. Evan's father asked, "Lauren, you never told us your dad was that Jack Mercer." That Jack Mercer. I had spent years being just dad. Then, apparently, I became that Jack Mercer. My daughter called 7 times. I answered on the 8th. It was nearly 9 o'clock. I had left Red Valley and pulled into a gas station because the snow was too heavy to keep driving safely. "Dad?" "Hello, sweetheart. Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "Where are you?" "On my way home." "You're driving?" "Not right now. I saw the news." "So I heard." "Dad, what happened?" I looked through the windshield at snow falling under the parking lot lights. A water main broke." "I know that." "I mean, why were you there?" "Tom called." "And you just went?" "They needed help." "Dad, that storm is dangerous." I almost smiled. 12 hours earlier, she had been worried I might not fit in at dinner. Now she was worried about the highway. "I know. Why didn't you tell me?" There it was. The question I had expected. Why didn't you tell me? Not why did I exclude you? Not were you hurt? Not did you spend Thanksgiving alone? Why didn't you tell me you were someone other people might admire? "I didn't know I was going," I said. "No, I mean about all of this." "All of what?" "Your work, the systems. People at dinner knew your name." I leaned back in my seat. "You knew what I did for a living. You always said you worked for the city." "I did." "You never said you designed things like that." "You never asked." Silence. "Dad?" "Yes?" "I feel terrible." I waited. "I shouldn't have told you not to come." "No." "I was under pressure." "I know. Evan's parents." I interrupted her. "Don't do that." "What?" "Don't put your decision in someone else's mouth." She went quiet. The snow kept falling. I could hear people talking in the gas station behind me. I made the call, she said finally. Yes, I was embarrassed. That surprised me. Not the truth, the fact that she admitted it. Of me? Her voice cracked. Not exactly. I waited. Of where I came from. That hurt differently, more deeply. Lauren, I know how that sounds. You came from my house. I know. You grew up at my table. I know. Your mother painted your bedroom yellow because you said pink was for babies. She started crying. I closed my eyes. For one terrible second, I was back outside her room after Susan died. My daughter crying behind a locked door. Me wishing I could fix death with a wrench. Dad, I'm sorry. I swallowed. I believe you. Can I come get you? No. Then come here. Please. Everyone's still here. That almost made me laugh. Now there was room. Now I would not be embarrassing. Now the investors knew my name. No, sweetheart. Dad, please. I'm tired. We can wait. I don't want anyone waiting for me. She stopped talking. So did I. Finally, she said, Are you angry? Yes. I've never heard you say that. I've been angry before. You never show it. That doesn't mean it isn't there. She cried quietly. I let her. Parents make a mistake sometimes. We rush to comfort our children before they have finished feeling the consequences of what they did. I had done that with Lauren for years. Every hard moment, I softened. Every financial mistake, I helped. Every conflict, I told her it was fine. Every forgotten birthday, every canceled dinner, every holiday schedule built around Evan's family, I said I understood. Maybe I had taught her that hurting me had no cost. Dad, she whispered, what happens now? I looked at my reflection in the dark windshield. An old man with tired eyes. Not the 33-year-old from the television. Not the engineer people suddenly wanted to talk about. Just me. I'm still your father. I know. And I love you. I love you too. But I'm not going to keep auditioning for a place in your family. She inhaled sharply. Dad, I won't compete with Evan's parents. I won't compete with investors. I won't prove I can behave properly around important people. That is what happened today. She did not argue. Good. I want to fix this, she said. Then fix it slowly. What does that mean? It means don't invite me somewhere tomorrow because you feel guilty tonight. She was silent. It means call when there are no cameras. Visit when nobody important is watching. Let the kids come to my house even if the furniture doesn't match. A small laugh escaped through her tears. It really doesn't. I know. I'm sorry. I know. We stayed on the phone a few more minutes. Then I drove home. The power was still on. The house was cold and quiet. I took off my wet coat, put on dry socks. Then I opened the refrigerator and saw the pumpkin pie. I laughed. I cut myself a piece. At 10:43, there was a knock at the door. I expected my neighbor. Instead, I opened it and found Mason and Chloe standing on the porch holding plastic containers. Lauren stood behind them. Evan was next to her. No expensive coat, no polished smile. Just a tired man holding a casserole dish. Mom said we could bring Grandpa dinner, Chloe announced. I looked at Lauren. I thought you said not tonight. I know. She looked nervous. So we won't stay. She held up a small paper bag. We just brought food. Mason grinned. And Grandma Evelyn sent pie. I already have pie. Chloe gasped. Then now you have 2 pies. There is no arguing with an 8-year-old's logic. I stepped onto the porch. Lauren looked at me. Her eyes were red. I meant what I said, she told me. So did I. I know. She nodded. Then she handed me the bag. Happy Thanksgiving, Dad. Happy Thanksgiving, sweetheart. I hugged the kids. I shook Evan's hand. Lauren and I looked at each other for a moment. Then she hugged me too. I hugged her back, but I did not tell her everything was fine. Because it wasn't. Not yet. The next morning, my phone was full of messages. News stations, former coworkers, people I had not heard from in 20 years. I declined every interview. The attention faded within a week. That is what attention does. The town repaired the main. The bypass stayed open for 3 days. St. Catherine's never evacuated. Life moved on. But something in my life had changed. For years, I had built my calendar around Lauren. I waited to see which holidays were available, which weekends worked, when the grandchildren had sports. When Evan's family was traveling, I took whatever space remained. After Thanksgiving, I stopped doing that. Not out of revenge, out of respect. For myself. I started meeting Tom for breakfast twice a month. I volunteered with a technical mentoring program at the community college. Ben, the young operator from Red Valley, called me so often with questions that I finally told him I was charging him in coffee. I joined a group restoring old irrigation infrastructure on rural properties. My life became busy. Not television busy, real busy, useful busy. 6 weeks after Thanksgiving, Lauren called. Dad, are you free Sunday? I'm helping at the college. She paused. Oh, but I'm free Saturday morning. We can do Saturday. That was new. For both of us. At Christmas, she did not ask me to attend Evan's parents' party. Instead, she asked if she and the kids could come to my house on Christmas Eve. They arrived at 3. Mason brought the woodworking set I had given him. Chloe set up her telescope in the backyard. Evan wore jeans. Lauren made mashed potatoes. Badly. At dinner, Chloe noticed the paper turkey on my refrigerator. Mom, did you make that? Lauren stared at it. I watched her read the words she had written 32 years earlier. I am thankful for Dad because he fixes everything. She touched the paper carefully. Then she looked at me. You kept this? Of course. Her eyes filled. Why? I shrugged. Because my daughter made it. She turned away for a second. Then she laughed. You know, Dad, you really can't fix everything. I figured that out. She looked at me again. But maybe some things can be repaired. I nodded. Some things. That Christmas did not erase Thanksgiving. That was not the point. Forgiveness is not pretending the damage never happened. It is deciding whether the damaged thing is worth rebuilding. And rebuilding requires more than regret. It requires work. Lauren did the work. Not perfectly, but consistently. She called. She visited. She stopped treating my time as automatically available. When Evan made a joke once about my truck, she told him, right in front of me, that truck has done more honest work than half the cars in your father's garage. I nearly choked on my coffee. Even Evan laughed. A year later, Red Valley installed a permanent plaque beside the emergency bypass. They asked me to attend the dedication. I almost said no. Then I invited Lauren. She came. No investors. No photographers she had arranged. Just my daughter, standing beside me in the cold. The plaque listed the names of the original engineering team. Mine was one of 7. Lauren, read each name. I thought it would just be yours. No system is built by one person. She smiled. You always say things like that, because they're true. She slipped her arm through mine. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, Dad? Yes? That Thanksgiving. I looked at her. I know I've apologized. You have. But there's something I never told you. What? When everyone saw you on the news, I was embarrassed. I raised an eyebrow. I know. Great progress. She laughed. No, not embarrassed by you. Her smile disappeared. Embarrassed because I realized strangers knew your value better than I did. I looked toward the old maintenance yard. Snow covered the ground, just like it had the night everything changed. You knew my value, I said. She shook her head. I knew you loved me. I think I confused that with you always being available, always being there. I thought because you never demanded anything, you didn't need anything. I nodded slowly. That happens. I don't want to do that again. Then don't. She squeezed my arm. Sometimes the lesson comes quietly. Not in the moment when cameras are rolling, not when strangers applaud, not when the people who dismissed you suddenly discover your name. The real lesson came later for me. I spent most of my life believing that being a good father meant always leaving the door open. I still believe in keeping the door open. But I learned you do not have to stand in the doorway begging someone to walk through it. You can love your children deeply and still require respect. You can forgive them and still remember what happened. You can understand their mistakes without volunteering to be hurt by the same mistake twice. And when someone you love decides you are no longer important enough for their table, do not waste your life trying to convince them otherwise. Build your own table. Fill it with people who show up. Do work that matters to you. Keep learning, keep helping, keep living. Because sometimes, when the people closest to you stop seeing who you are, the answer is not to become louder. It is simply to stop shrinking. My daughter saw me on the news that Thanksgiving, but the truth is, television did not make me valuable. It only forced her to look at a man who had been standing in front of her all along. By Evite. Sometimes love means keeping the door open, and sometimes it means learning not to stand there begging to be welcomed. We can forgive the people we love while still honoring our own worth, setting healthy boundaries, and building a life filled with purpose and kindness. When we stop shrinking ourselves for others, we often discover that there is still plenty of room for healing, connection, and joy. A small note for you. This story was created and fictionalized by AI for entertainment, while also sharing a positive life lesson about love, dignity, and second chances.